Let's make the best loaf of white sandwich bread you'll ever have. There's nothing better than fresh homemade bread. It's a no-knead dough, and the bread has an amazingly soft crust and a soft white crumb. While supermarket bread can be convenient, it just does not compare to homemade. Have you seen the ingredient list on some supermarket breads? You can make that exact sandwich bread with only a handful of ingredients. And with a little bit of science, I'm going to show you how you can make sandwich bread that stays soft for days, just like the one you get in supermarkets. Just as flexible, perfectly sliceable, strong enough that we can butter it without it tearing, and strong enough to hold lots of delicious sandwich fillings. I'm going to show you 2 ways to make this bread. One that uses a stand mixer to knead the dough, if that's how you like making your bread, and a no-knead method that doesn't need any special equipment. Both methods will give you the exact same results. The first step for both methods is to warm the milk in the microwave. Typically, we use flour, water, salt, and yeast when making bread. However, if we did that, we wouldn't get anything close to sandwich bread, and it would be rock hard and stale after a day. So the first change to make is to use milk. The milk, along with the other ingredients, will yield a softer crumb. To the warm milk, add the salt and sugar. A lot of people think you need sugar to activate the yeast. This isn't true. We're adding sugar today for another reason. Sugar molecules like to bind water molecules. It's going to help the bread stay fresh for longer. You won't really taste the sugar, although sandwich bread does have a subtle sweetness. We're going to add olive oil. You won't taste it, but it helps give the bread flexibility. It also slows down staling by stopping the starch and water molecules separating in the baked bread. Combine everything together along with the yeast, and let's talk flour. You want to use strong bread flour for this recipe. The strong bread flour gives this bread a soft, springy texture and ensures the gluten network is strong enough to support a great rise on the bread. We want it to rise high out of the tin when we bake it to give us that characteristic sandwich loaf shape. Into the bowl of the stand mixer, add the bread flour and the liquids. You want to mix the ingredients on medium speed until the dough comes together. Then increase the speed to high and knead for another 3 minutes. The dough should pull away from the sides of the bowl and feel tacky. Grease your bowl, grease your hands, and shape the dough into a ball. Cover the dough and set aside to rise for 2 hours. Now let's make the no-knead version for anyone who doesn't have a stand mixer and doesn't want to be bothered to knead dough by hand. In a bowl, combine warm milk, salt, sugar, oil, and yeast. Give these ingredients a mix to dissolve the sugar and salt and add the flour. Mix everything together with a fork until it forms a rough, shaggy dough. Now this dough is similar to my English muffin dough, meaning it's a relatively low hydration dough. It's not going to be as wet as your typical no-knead bread doughs, and there's a reason for that. If you're familiar with bread making, you'll know that high protein flour along with high hydration yields big air bubbles, and lots of them too. However, sandwich bread has a very tight, soft crumb. You achieve this by using a lower hydration. Now, because this is a low hydration dough, eventually you'll have to switch to using your hands, otherwise your fork will break. You want to wet your hand with water and continue mixing, making sure there's no dry patches of flour and dough. Using a wet hand really allows you to hydrate any dry patches. Cover the dough and let it rest for 30 minutes to allow the flour to continue to hydrate. After 30 minutes, we're going to do what we often do with no-knead doughs. You know the drill by now. We're going to do the good old stretches and folds. Wet your hand and perform your first series of stretch and folds, turning the bowl 1/4 as we go. Do about 4 folds. Then take your wet hand and push the dough under itself, creating a rounded ball. This method, along with the stretch and folds, allows you to start to develop the gluten network. As you can see, we went from a shaggy dough to a nice soft dough ball. Cover the dough and set aside for another 30 minutes to allow the gluten to develop and to relax so it's ready to stretch again. Come back and do a second series of stretch and folds. You'll know when to stop because the dough won't be elastic anymore, and at that point, using a wet hand, you're going to ball up the dough again and come back in 30 minutes and perform your third series of stretch and folds. You want to repeat this process another 2 times, so 4 series in total. After every series, you want to ball up the dough, pushing the dough under itself and creating a smooth, plump dough. After the last series of stretch and folds, you're going to allow the dough to rise for about 1 hour or until it has tripled in size. So cover the bowl and set aside for 1 to 2 hours. This will depend on how warm your kitchen is. Once the dough has tripled in size, we're ready to make sandwich bread. As you can see, both doughs look identical. You're going to generously butter your loaf pans and line the bottom. Now, the written recipe makes 1 loaf. I'm making 2 loaves today because I've shown you 2 different methods of making sandwich bread. Transfer your dough onto a lightly floured, clean work surface, and using your pan as a guide, we're going to roll out this dough using a rolling pin into a rectangle. Starting from one of the ends, roll up the bread into a sausage shape. Tug the ends in, place the roll in the pan seam side down, and I do like to gently press down the dough for an even rise. You're going to loosely cover the bread, or in my case breads, and allow to rise for about 1 hour or until the dough has risen above the top of your loaf pan. Again, this will depend on the temperature of your kitchen, so be patient. Bake the bread in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 180 degrees Celsius. This will take around 25 minutes. Do not overbake this bread or it will dry out. While the bread is still hot, I do like to butter the top. This is optional, but it does give the crust the most amazing flavor. As soon as the bread comes out of the oven, carefully remove it from the loaf tin and let it sit on a wire rack so the bottom and sides do not become soggy. This has to cool for at least 1 hour before you cut into it. This bread is incredibly soft and delicious, perfect for any sandwich. The bread will keep for about a week if stored correctly. You want to store the bread at room temperature in a Zip-Lock bag, not in the fridge, or you can even pre-slice it if you want and freeze it. Then just take out the slices you want and toast them from frozen. This bread will keep frozen for about a month or 2. However, in my house, homemade bread never lasts that long. You'll find many more breads and delicious simple food in my new cookbook, Simple Pleasures.